All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Captain's Table. My name's Tony Hall, for those of you that I haven't met before. And I run Navigator Consulting. We're a management consulting firm to the recruitment industry, and we specialise in helping to grow recruitment companies and sit alongside owners to navigate all the challenges that you face as an owner and help build your business and help you to get to eventual succession or exit. So really glad that you all joined us. Thank you very much to our regulars that constantly attend Captain's Table, and you know who you are. It's great that you make time to come and join us. We'll always try and get you really good quality content. And also, big thanks to our sponsors. You can see up there on my screen at the moment, Job Out Airs, A Positive Digit Pro, and William Buck. Without them, there's no way we could put Captain's Table together every month and deliver you really good content. And on that note, talking about great content and really good presenters, a presenter that's quite familiar to all of you, Adele Last. Adele, welcome. Great that you're speaking, and you're speaking today on a topic that is, since day dot, has been a challenge for owners of recruitment companies, finding great staff, not just finding them, but obviously training them and retaining them. It's one of the biggest issues in the industry, and more so now with the talent shortage and our borders closed, and everyone is looking for some insights here. So Adele, thank you very much for joining us and speaking today, and over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony, and thank you everyone for having me. Thanks for the upfront words of encouragement, Jason. Appreciate that. I will just jump into sharing my screen now. Tony and I are just going to switch between that. So just give me 2 seconds to do that. And I'll just bring up the presentation. Can someone just let me know when you can see that on screen? Just so that it's telling me it's loading.
We're good.
We're good. Excellent. Fantastic. So thank you very much for having me at Captain's Table. For those of you that do know me, you'll know that I work closely with Tony on Consultants Table, which is a similar event to this, aimed more at your consulting teams and experienced recruiters. And Tony has invited me today to come and speak to you at Captain's Table, and he asked me to let out all my secrets. Naughty that he was. He said, you know, can we actually tell them all about what you're doing, but let them know the things that you've learned. And so that's what I'm going to share today. A lot about, as I said, the secrets that I've picked up, particularly in finding recruiters and training recruiters in the last couple of years. So I'm going to share all of that with you. Presentation is going to go for about 40 minutes, I believe, and then I've allowed some time for questions. So feel free to ask the question if you think it's relevant at the time. If I've rolled on through, pop it in the chat, or we'll leave some time at the end as well. Just a little bit about me for those that don't know me or want to understand my background or how I come to be standing here and presenting this information to you. I have been in the recruitment industry myself, 25 plus years, I think is the number I'll leave there now. I think it's 27, closing in on 28. We'll leave it at 25 plus from here on. Otherwise, people will start guessing my age, I suppose. But my background has been in a broad range of different areas: executive IT, blue collar, business support, safety and risk. I've worked across lots of different industries within our industry, and I've worked for both small boutique and multinational large organizations as well. So I have a nice broad background of experience from a recruitment perspective. I also have done some internal recruitment for a large government department. So I went to the dark side for a short while during COVID on a project. So I've got some understanding about the client side, particularly large government department recruitment practices. But since 2019, since the end of 2019, I have been training, mentoring and consulting to recruitment businesses. So this organisation is my own. It's called Career Lasso, and I do just that. I create an Australian pathway into the recruitment sector. It's a first. There isn't anybody else that's doing this or done this before in terms of creating what is an externally provided sourcing, training and placement service to our industry. I want to give you a little bit of background and information around, I guess, the market at present And what we're faced with, many of you know, obviously, current market conditions around bringing in talent into our industry, but I'll just give you some statistics and data around that. This is the most recent data I can get at the moment, because I believe there's another report due from Feb/March. So we're kind of just in the midst of being able to access that at the moment. So I've got it up until October of last year. So it will have moved a little since then, but there has been a growth of around 19% in recruitment agencies. So the number of recruitment agencies have grown by 19% since 2018 to present. So there has been lots of new agencies opening up in that time, but we've actually seen a reduction of around 9% of people working in the sector. So what does that tell you? That tells you that people have gone out perhaps and opened their own businesses, left from existing recruitment agencies and gone and opened smaller businesses. And obviously many have left the industry altogether, which some of you may be aware of and have felt with some of your own staff. That equates to around 20,000 in that time, since 2018 to now, which is about 11 people a week are leaving the sector. And these are the things that sort of started me on this journey around creating the business and trying to solve this issue, which, as Tony said, for most agency owners, certainly in my whole career, has been a perpetual issue. We're always faced with the issue around finding talent for our own organisations, retaining that talent, training that talent well. So that was the driver around why my business started. Just wanted to share this slide with you, which I'm sure is a familiar sight. This is the unemployment rate seasonally adjusted from the ABS. This is a graph we're probably all familiar with. Even if you didn't know the number, you'll be familiar with how that looks. So we were cruising along nicely in 2019, and then you can see COVID hit and unemployment spiked right up as high as 7.5%, and then back down at Feb 2022. So last month, we're pushing it back down to 4%. But look, it's much lower than it's ever been. So this is the interesting result, which many of you are familiar with, post some sort of economic impact. The recovery is always a really interesting picture to paint. So we're at some of the lowest unemployment rates that we've seen in this country that just goes back a few years, but many of you will know that that's for much longer than that period as well, that we're having the lowest unemployment rate. This next one is some stats for you around job tenure, and this is coming from a government report around the average tenure of people in their jobs in Australia. And this is all sectors. This is not specific to recruitment, but it groups it by age group and the number of years. And there's probably no surprises. The younger ones are moving around a little more frequently as we settle into perhaps family life and building a career. We seem to start to see some longevity, but the average across Australia for all sectors is 3 years and 4 months in terms of how long people stay in one role. Maybe we need to tell our clients this as well. Does anyone want to have a guess of what the average tenure in the recruitment sector is? Is it close to that 3 years, 4 months? Does anyone want to have a stab at that? Have a guess? Pop it in the chat, yell it out to me if you think you know what the tenure in the recruitment industry is compared to that, now that you've sort of seen that graph.
12 months.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's 12 months. Thanks, Sarah. And Ivan and Jason, I think somebody else popped it in there as well. Yeah, 12 to 18 at the most. Yeah, you're feeling it already, you're knowing that by your own feeling. It's really hard to retain people, but 12 months, we all know that it's really not a long time, and it's well below what is the industry average across all industries, and even at the youngest end, right, at that under 25 end, it's even lower. They're doing 1 year and 8 months still on average there. So it's a problem, right? It's a problem that we know. They're hard to find. It's hard to find experienced recruiters, it's hard to create new ones, and it's hard to retain them. We know these things. I'm not telling you anything new there, I'm sure. Why is that the case? These are some of the pressures. I want to just address this and make sure we're all on the same page around it. So some of the pressures from 2021 into 2022. There was and has been that internal talent acquisition refill. Okay, we all know what happened. 2020 hit, internal recruitment and HR teams dumped their recruitment staff, put them off, made them redundant, let them go. And then as the market started to turn in 2021 into 2022, they went, oh, now we need recruiters again. Where will we get recruiters from? And we'll start pulling them out of agency market. Okay, and for those of you that have been in business for some time in this industry, you'll know what I'm talking about. There was a time not that long ago, actually, a couple of years ago, where internal recruitment teams would not look at agency staff. They wouldn't take agency staff. They had to have internal experience. All the ads said HR qualification and you must have worked internal. Now have a look at the ads. The ads say any recruitment experience, internal or agency, will take you. So our clients are taking our own staff. Our clients are taking that overflow or the uplift of the talent that we've created in our industry going internal. There is a change in skills that are required in our industry, and that's a very recent and post-COVID impact to this. Many of you will be aware of that as well. The skills that are required of a recruiter in today's market are different to just 4 years ago. Okay, it's a different skill set. If you've got a recruiter that started any time within the last 4 years to now, they are finding what they learned and if they started 4 years ago and what they're doing now is a different recruitment job. Okay, 4 years ago, you advertised a job, you had ad response to sort through. Now, what do we do? It's almost virtual pure headhunting in some markets, okay? So it's a change of skill, which has created that market pressure in our industry. It's obviously very candidate-driven, we know that. And I've put there a distinction between candidate-driven versus candidate-short, because we've always had a candidate-short market. Australia as a whole is candidate short. We don't have actually enough people in our population to cover all of the work that we need done. So we've been in a candidate short market for a really long time, well before COVID. But what we have now is a candidate driven market. The candidates are dictating things, as we know, around working from home, around salaries, around benefits and conditions. So things are changing around what's being driven and where it's being driven from, which is very candidate focused. Time pressures. They did always exist, of course. Clients want everything yesterday. We know that. Time pressure's always been there. But is anyone finding that that's increased? Is anyone finding that time pressure now has tightened? Anyone finding that people's expectations are faster and faster? I find clients are emailing me and then expecting me to reply within an hour or two to an email. Now, in my opinion, an email is non-urgent. If you're sending me an email, I will respond to that, but it might be up to 24 hours later. You know, I'm in training courses all day. I'm not sitting in front of my email, so I may not get to it till tonight and therefore not reply till tomorrow. If you urgently need me, you'll need to pick up the phone. Now, that used to be a kind of universal agreement, I suppose, but now I'm finding clients will send an email and then they're ringing me an hour later going, how come you haven't replied to the email? I don't know, maybe you guys are finding something similar. So those time pressures are shrinking, in my opinion, which is creating quite a bit of market pressure. The reskilling post-COVID, for the post-COVID conditions, and I'm talking there about our own market in that idea of the change of skills. We need to reskill our own staff, but also about the reskilling of your clients' talent as well, having to look at candidates differently. Think about how many candidates you've placed in the last 6 months that you may not have placed at all a few years ago, right? They didn't make the cut before, and now suddenly our assessments are changing in some ways, yeah? We're looking at people's skills differently or maybe reskilling. We've got Gen Z in the market, have been for a little while, but in greater numbers now. So as the years progress now, Gen Z are going to start to become the dominant generation in the market. And interestingly now, we've also got many recruitment agencies owned by Gen Xers. Okay, so the Gen Xers are owning and employing the Gen Zs, and we couldn't have a greater divide between generations than those two. that's a whole nother training session or presentation to you if you're interested in that stuff. But that's a big gap, yeah, between Gen Z and Gen X are some of the biggest gaps we've seen in generational differences. So that's a huge market pressure, right? Different expectations, different ways of working, different doing things. If you're a Gen Z and you're hiring if you're a Gen X and own an agency and you're hiring young people right now, you know what I'm talking about. It's like they're from a different planet, okay, at many times. And then we've also got that whole COVID life reassessment, right? This is why there's not enough people in the market as well, because many recruitment recruiters burnt out. They're tired, they went out, they lost their jobs and they went, right, stuff this, I'm not going to do recruitment anymore, I'm going to go and do something else. So we lost people in the industry as well, which created even more market pressure. And so all of these factors combined in different levels have created this situation where we have a talent shortage in recruitment unlike anything else that we've ever seen in any previous time. This is just a really quick slide. I'll only show this one very briefly, but this is my model if anybody wants to understand that. And I just show you this, not as the sales pitch, but to actually show you some of the things I'm trying to solve through my model. So the model is around finding people who have transferable skills, people who are able to learn to become a recruiter. And I have a whole program around how I do that and how I assess them. And I'm happy to talk to anyone in more detail if they want to know about that. Then I provide the training to them. I actually find the right kind of transferable core skills. I actually introduce them to you first. So this model's slightly varied for now, but I introduce you to them. When we find one that you like, then I do the training. So I'm doing that foundational training with them to make sure that they actually start with you from the right point, because that to me has been a big issue. You guys are recruiters, you can find your own staff, you know how to identify good people who can transfer the skills, but I've often found that the training piece is missing. The structured training piece is quite key in making sure that the person's set up well to start in the job. I make sure that they apply the learning, that they're actually able to do the job once they get into the job with you through the initial first 4 weeks of assessment with them. And then obviously you keep them on from there and you've got a permanent employee. So we're partnering and spreading the risk here a little bit with my program. Well, I'm helping you find people, I'm helping with the training, you're supporting somebody coming new into the industry. And the final part of my model, which is really interesting, is that I charge the trainee for the cost of the training, a small portion of it, it's not the full cost, but I charge them an enrolment fee into the training. Even though you're employing them as a direct employee, even though you'll provide additional training to them once they start in the job or potentially formally as well, I get that commitment from them. And that's a part of the model that I think a lot of agency owners find really interesting. Are people prepared to pay for their own training to come into an industry? And the answer is yes. That's exactly how my model works. So just to give you an idea of some of the outcomes, I commenced in October of 2019 with the first intake, and that's a photo of some of my first trainees that went through the program into 2019. I've essentially run monthly intakes since then. Started out a little slower. I think it was probably quarterly to start with at the end of 2019, at the start of 2020. I still did run it through 2020, through the thick of COVID, but it did have to switch to online. Obviously, everybody was in lockdown, but essentially doing monthly intakes now on a regular basis of approximately 10 people each intake across all sectors in the industry and across Australia-wide. Okay, that's what I'm currently doing. I'm proud to say that 80% are working in agencies now. So my conversion rate of people that I'm training and going in is 80%, actually higher in a lot of cases, as I said, because I actually introduce them to you first. So we actually set up the job agreement before they've even gone into the training. So in most cases, it's possibly even higher than 80%, but certainly 80% of candidates all coming through working in the industry. But the next stat is the one I'm really proud of. 72% of people that I've trained since 2019 are still in the recruitment 12 months later. Obviously, I can't measure it on the current ones that I'm placing this week and last month, but from the start of my program, I check in on them, I check where they are, I check that they're staying in the industry and that they're still having a good experience, and 72% are, which from what I can tell in our industry is really high. Many of you talk to me about running something similar yourself, where you're bringing people in, training them up or coaching them on the job. And I'm finding the stat no higher than 50% anywhere else in the industry that I can find of anyone doing it themselves. Even the big players, the Hazes and the Manpowers that have, the Manpower Academy, their retention rate is really low. It's lucky if it's 40%. So they'll take 20 people in a year, and they're lucky if 10 of them are still there 12 months later. That's a lot of, time and effort and resources gone into that. And I also do specific company intakes now as well, which is new to my model, which I hadn't done when I first started, but organisations that are large enough that are happy to take a bulk group of candidates, I could run this program within your business. So if you say to me, I want to take 4 or 5 people once a year or twice a year, like a graduate intake program, we can work together to work out something specific for your organisation, and I would run the training on your site or specific to your industry or sector, if that's the case. So that's some of the key outcomes I'm really proud of that I wanted to share with you. Some interesting facts that I wanted to share as well that you may or may not be aware of around the people that I deal with through my program. The average age is actually early 30s. That surprises some people when I tell them that. So it isn't a graduate program. It isn't about taking kids that are 23 years old straight in without any experience. Although I have some of those from time to time as well. But on average, the age is actually early 30s, which means they have kind of 5 or 10 years work experience in another sector, maybe in your sector. Okay. And that's really valuable, as we know. They've got some life experience, they've got some industry experience, they may even have a bit of a network built already. So I find most candidates have a little bit of work experience. And so their career changes, not necessarily starting out. And what I also find interesting is that I've said most, I reckon if I had to put a number to that, it'll be 2/3. 2/3 of the candidates that come through my program have tried to break into this industry before talking to me. 2/3 of them have applied direct to you. 2/3 of them have contacted your agencies and said, I'd like to be a recruiter, and they've not heard, been rejected, not made it through. So I find that one really interesting. Yeah, I'm making money on people perhaps you could have had yourself, but it's, as I said, it's that combination of the model of my program. They come from a broad range of industry backgrounds. I've got people, I have placed people who come from retail and hospitality. Obviously, they're obvious breeding grounds, but I've placed people from real estate. I've placed people from healthcare. I've placed teachers. I've placed hairdressers. I have placed blue collar workers as well that want to get off tools or want to get into a more office-based environment. It's not just salespeople, if that's what you're thinking as well. So people from very broad ranges of backgrounds have come through the program. And as I said earlier, they've all paid to train themselves. So there's some interesting facts that I wanted to share with you. All right, moving into the learnings and some of the things I want to share, some of the secrets that I want to share with you around what I've learned and what you can bring into your own business. It's obvious to me great candidates are being overlooked. And I know that's happened sometimes because we are busy. Sometimes we want to see a more ready-made product. And that's what I'm trying to do with my model, is produce for you a more ready-made product. That's a terrible way to describe a person, I know, but you know what I mean, a more ready to go employee. So we're overlooking some candidates directly yourselves. As I said, many of them have contacted you before and not been successful getting into recruitment. Removing the barriers to entry and some of the stereotypes is work that I'm perpetually doing. It's something I'm really passionate about. We do it really well with our clients. We try to work with our clients around getting them to get out of their own way and pull down those barriers around who they can and can't hire. But I hate to say it, guys, as an industry, we're not great at it either. So many of my clients still have these stereotypical ideas about what makes a great recruiter and who could be a recruiter, based actually, for some of you, on what made a great recruiter 20 years ago, not now. So I want to challenge that with you about learning to look at removing some of those barriers, looking at how difficult does it need to be, how can we get more people into the industry, which is really what I'm all about. Training assessments, which will prove some skills. That's what I want people to think about as well. So what can be trainable, what can be teachable, coachable, to produce those skills. And I think that might surprise you. There is certainly much more that can be trained than I think many agency owners give credit to. Many of you look for that X factor, you know, that sales ability, that gift of the gab, you know, we're often looking for that perfect combination, but I want you to think about some of these elements that actually can be trained, because I'm seeing some candidates that on face value you might reject and go, I don't know that they'll be a great recruiter. They're actually having great results. They're having great results in the industry. They're learning the skills and then they're developing those on the job. So I think that's a great learning. Maturity is paying off. I mentioned those career changes. I mentioned people in their early 30s being the average age. The maturity element of having worked in the workforce for 10 years and not being so green is, I really believe, you know, part of the success of this as well, okay? Because they're not coming into an industry that's new and being scared off as easily. You know, that's the reality of it. They've had a bit of life experience. They've seen the grass isn't greener. You know, they're not coming straight out of uni all wide-eyed and going, okay, I'm going to be a recruiter, and starting in and then 12 months later going, this isn't what I expected it to be, which is where many people are only hiring from. Hiring those more mature candidates definitely pays off. And harnessing people's strengths, you know, again, looking at what do they bring to the business that's different. So, you know, we've got to get better at hiring on people's strengths or your weaknesses. You know, we know that's a model. Good managers do that. Hire the people, hire the talent in that you don't have. Don't hire in your own image and your own likeness. Try and hire that diversity that you don't have in the business. So harness other people's strengths. Learnings around visa and working rights, I should say, flexibility. Our whole industry has had to get more flexible around that, but I still encourage that. Again, I think we're overlooking and missing out on some great candidates because we're getting too rigid about saying, well, the person's not a permanent resident, you know, or the person may be on some sort of visa restriction. Can we work with it? Let's look at how we can work with the visa restrictions, which are loosened because of COVID, as we know. But are you going to miss out on a great candidate because of issues around working rights? Have a think about that. And I've certainly placed a number of people into recruitment in recent times who have a limited work rights, meaning they have a visa with an end date, but somebody's gone ahead to hire them anyway because the end date's 2 years or 3 years from now. So previously we would have gone, oh, we can't hire that person. Look at hiring them. You're going to get them locked in for the 2 or 3 years and hopefully they'll get their permanent residency from there. Worry about that at the time. You know, that's still longer than you're having in your average tenure. And looking at your own staff matching your candidate diversity. That's the other learning I want to make to all of you, that we should be looking at our candidate pool being able to see a reflection of themselves in the market in our own staff. And if you're not thinking about doing that, then you need to be looking at that. You know, diversity is the big buzzword, I know, but we need to make sure we're bringing in greater diversity in particularly, I'd like to see that in nationality and cultural backgrounds, but even disabilities as well. Yeah, I'd like to see us improve that in our industry. We tell our clients to do this. We should be the best example of trying to show that people from different diverse backgrounds can make great recruiters. So that's the start of some of the learnings around the program. A bit of a secret or secrets around the training that I think make a big difference as well. The fact that it's structured training. There's no doubt about it. You guys know this, right? Everybody knows that when you do a more structured training program, you get a better outcome, as opposed to the stick them on the desk, stick them next to the best recruiter, run a video in front of them, let them learn, read this, do that, and then off you go, hit the ground running. It doesn't work as successfully as when they run through a structured program, mine or otherwise, right? A structured training program is valuable. The skill application is the other part. I mentioned that in my program. I like to make sure that they're actually applied the skills. I check that with you. I check that with them. I'm teaching them how to do a reference check. Then we're getting them to do the reference check on the job with you. And then we're checking, are they doing it right? So that practicing of the skills and applying the skills is a really key element of this. It isn't just training that they're going to forget 5 minutes later. It's about really being practical and being able to apply it in the job. I believe that my training personally is current and modern and relevant. Up-to-date techniques, up-to-date tools, sourcing of candidates, what's going on in the current market out there, not what happened 10 or 20 years ago when, you know, some trainers were recruiters. I'm still recruiting now. So what they're getting from me is that current up-to-date, how to survive in this market, how to actually be successful as a recruiter today in March, April 2022, not 10 years ago or 20 years ago in glory days, okay? So I think that's what's making a big difference, that my training is very practical, and that's the kind of comment that I get from a lot of trainees and clients that put their staff through me, that it's very current, modern, it's real world skills for now. I think there's another secret you need to know about, that new trainees, new recruiters into our market are actually learning faster than you're allowing. This is something I'm finding with a lot of clients I'm working with. They are doing a structure program and wanting to kind of slow it down, or wanting to say, listen, I don't want to put too much on their plate. I don't want to overwhelm them. So we'll stagger it out. And what you're actually doing is not giving them the skills fast enough for when they need it. So actually giving them all of the skills they need up front. My program's a 2-week training course. It's full end-to-end 360 recruitment. I give all of those skills, which can then be further topped up with additional refreshers if we need to, as they move through things like, you know, dealing with their own accounts or clients or bringing in business. But don't slow down the training too slow. Yeah, don't just think, okay, we're just going to show you reference checks and we're just going to have you do reference checks for the next 2 weeks. You will lose them. You'll lose them because that's, you know, mind-numbingly boring, but they're learning the job faster than you're realizing, is the secret I want to share with you as well. And if you haven't got this idea that online onboarding can work and training can work, please know that I'm running it 100% that way. So I was doing face-to-face. It was actually part of my model. That was how I prefer to train. I prefer to train face-to-face, truth be told. I actually don't like this method. COVID forced me to switch it online, switch the way the training's delivered, the homework, the assessments, everything is modified now to work successfully online. And now I'm just running it online and I'm training great recruiters and they're getting in your businesses and they're making you money. It can work, okay? So remove this barrier from your mind that you know, online, I can't bring someone on because we're still remote or we're hybrid, or how are they going to learn? Yes, there is some great incidental learning that occurs if they're in the same office with you. I'm not going to argue that. I know that they can turn to you and ask a question in a second, as opposed to perhaps having a meeting or getting lost. So I know that it's better face-to-face. I know that if they're in the office, they will learn all of those incidental elements, but I'm just wanting you to know that it still can be done. Don't use that as an excuse. I can't hire somebody because I'm not going to be able to sit next to them every minute of the day, okay? There are people on this call that know that it has worked, right? I've trained them remotely. Okay. Sorry, froze for a second. All right, discoveries. We're getting to that pointy end here. Discoveries that you can use. These are more of the learnings that you can use in your business. This is the key takeaways here, guys. Competencies, not skills or job titles. When you are hiring your own staff, stop looking at their resumes with what skills that they've done before and what job titles have they held before. That's where you're making the mistake. Most candidates that apply to me and all of my ads, I don't ask them for a resume. That surprises a lot of people. Candidates do not apply to me with a resume. I have a conversation with them about what they're wanting to do, what their motivation is, what are the core competencies they've got. Later, I get the resume. Of course, I want to know what the chronological history of what they've done looks like, but that's not the decision-making process for me to decide whether I want to put them through the program. So that's some of the discoveries that I think you can do in your own business. Start looking at those competencies, not the job titles. Structured training, it's a must. If you are not doing a structured program to onboard people and bring them in a structured format that gives them all the skills that they need, allows them to apply that learning and that it's being assessed, then you're doing a disservice. You're setting them up for failure. Okay, don't turn around at the probation period end and go, they didn't quite get it. They need to have that training. It's really critical. And I'm happy to talk to anybody if they want some further support on that. If you've already finding your own candidates, I can also train people that you've already found or hired yourself. Decide quickly. We tell our clients this. We are still too slow with this. You know what you need, you know what's going to fit, you know your culture, you know that better than me. So when I put somebody in front of you, if you meet somebody, decide quickly and move quickly. We know candidates have great choice. Try and forecast and plan better. Again, you know, the adage of I need someone and I need someone yesterday. We're all busy. You've been busy at least for 12 months now. Yeah, a bit more than 12 months. The clock ticked over at the start of 2021 and we've all been busy ever since. So it's not going to slow down anytime soon. Forecast better for what you're going to need for this year, for next year, and make sure you've got the key people in place because it takes a bit of time for them to get up to speed. All right, no point waiting till you win that big contract to then put somebody on and then they're trying to learn on the job and you're trying to service a big account. So try and forecast and plan that better. I challenge you to aim for 80% retention for 12 months. That's where I'm heading. I said to you earlier, I was at 72%. I want 80% of people that have come through my program to still be in the industry 12 months later. That to me is a measure of my success of replenishing this industry, which is what I'm all about. So I challenge you to that. Try and let's make sure we can retain people in the industry after we've done all the work. Think about re-engineering commissions. That's always a pinch point. People sort of say, well, they're new. Do I give them commission? Do I put them on my existing plan? Yes, you give them commission, allow them to earn commissions or bonuses. And yes, you could put them in your existing plan, but maybe you could do a watered down version, which makes it easier for them to start to see some money early. Okay, so I challenge you to think about that. How could you re-engineer or how could you create a softer version of your bonus commission structure so that newbies can start to get that benefit of, I do this, I work hard, I earn this, and then build them up to, you know, a 3 times salary sort of model, and create clear pathways for their progression from day one. Induction training, the first day, should include what the pathway is going to be for their first month, for their 3 month, for their 6 month, for their 12 month on the first day. If you're not talking about where they'll be in 12 months on the first day, you're doing yourself and them a disservice and you may lose them. That's what they're thinking about. They've joined you, they're excited. They just see the path going up. What we do is we go, all right, just sit there, sit still and learn the job. And when I think you've learned it, then I'll talk to you about progression. It's the wrong model. You've got to turn this around. It doesn't mean you're committing to it. It doesn't mean you're saying to them, you're going to be in that role in 12 months. You're setting a pathway out for them. You're giving them the steps they need to achieve, the things they'll need to learn, the milestones that they'll need to achieve in order to get to that outcome. All right, I think I'm running over time. Oh, I was going to say, I thought there was one more slide and I was running over time. I'm right on time. It is 12:40. That is the end of my presentation, but I've left a lot of time on purpose because I know there'll be lots of questions. So I open it up here. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question or pop it in the chat and Tony will help facilitate it. But if people would like to ask me, go ahead, ask me any questions you would like.
Would like to start. Thank you, Adele. Brilliant. I've just taken 3 pages of notes. I have 5 questions that have come through. Anyone else want to kick off questions for Adele? You can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat.
Adele.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
That's good. I'm going to go straight to the end of everything you were talking about. So sorry, I probably should have thought of something earlier in the piece, but you've said re-engineer commissions to suit so those new staff members can build up. What are you seeing out in the market at the moment? Because I know that as an industry, we're going through a lot of change, and I think it's a real opportunity for us to restructure those areas, and not in the sense that we're, you know, doing a disservice to our staff, but in the sense that we can sort of change our model to make it a benefit for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. And from a newbie or trainee perspective, a really simple one I'm seeing is, you know, an amount per placement. A really simple $100, $500, whatever it might be, depending on the value of your placement, contract or temp or perm, but something really simple that says, if you make 10 placements, you're going to get this much money or this much for each placement. Okay. It's really simple for them to understand, and it's just cause and effect then. But what it does is it gets them in the habit of going, if I work hard and I make a play, it gets them focused on placements, work hard, get a placement, and I get a reward straight away. And it may only be a small amount, you know, $100 a placement's not going to excite an experienced recruiter. They're going to go, get real, I know how much money you actually make. But for a newbie, that's hugely exciting. And if you can't do it as cash, think about something that's more an incentive around maybe training opportunities or vouchers or actual vouchers, you know, vouchers to things, you know, an audiobook subscription that they could be downloading books or podcasts, or, you know, there are other ways that it doesn't have to be cash if cash is bothering anyone, but something that's definitely much more cause and effect.
And are you seeing companies that are sort of scrapping commissions altogether and just boosting up base salary?
Oh, yeah, in the experience space, no, I'm still seeing commissions, and I'm still seeing the vast majority of us are having the, you know, the 3 times 30% model or a variation of that. Although I met a client recently, I don't think they're on the call, but I'll share their model, which surprised me. First time I've ever heard this one, guys. 10% of every placement, no threshold. 10% of every placement, no threshold. Now, when I heard it, I went, oh, hang on a minute. That must be a lot of money. Go and calculate it. Actually, I think you're in front. You're paying, no, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
If you're paying 30 or 40% after 3 times, you're still paying out more than if you paid 10% per placement from day one. And what it does is from day one, makes them highly motivated, again, focusing on making the placement.
Yeah. Okay.
And then all the work that goes behind it. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I just learned about that one of a new client of mine last week or two.
Yeah. I like that one too, Adele, because then there's no clawback required either, is there, with thresholds? Hey, Adele, we've got another question that came through for you. Thanks, Sarah. How do you train getting job leads on as part of your training? You know, the business development aspect.
Yeah, for clients. So jobs coming in. There's a whole 2 modules, in fact, around the client account management and generating more work from existing clients and also generating new leads. And Saxon, who's asked this, it's a build-up model depending on their skill set, Saxon. So if they've got great sales skills already developed from another industry, they can come in on this ladder at a higher level. But I teach them from the very basic sourcing perspective of where leads could come from if they're new to it, or they're not confident, or they're not really sure of it. So from the base level of things like, you know, reference checks and places where it's very easy to generate a lead, right through to more aggressive processes, again, for somebody that's more experienced. So it's 2 modules in my training around sales. I don't call them sales because it freaks them out, right? So they're not called modules. I rename them, but that's what it is for us. 2 modules on straight sales, one around how to grow existing accounts, and a separate one on new generation leads, but at multi-level.
Okay, and on that, Adele, straight on for that, twice you mentioned competencies, assessing their competencies. How do you assess competencies of people to determine whether they're going to be a good recruiter?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I use lots of different methods that you would be familiar with. So I've certainly developed a competency family, a group of competencies in combination that I see as a positive, as a positive group for recruiters in general. There's a bit of variation to that for some industries, in some specializations like engineering and even safety risk, where I've worked before as well. It does vary slightly, but I've created a list of competencies for a great recruiter, and then I use a variety of means of assessing that, from obviously the interview and a behavioural-based questioning through to a psychometric profile that I do on candidates before they come to you as well as obviously any other checks and background that we do. We also sometimes do some assessments of them on the job. So we might give them some tasks that are relevant to the recruitment industry and get them to, give us back the information or assess the problem and give us a solution and see what they come up with. So we're testing we're identifying the skills and then doing some testing around that. There's not hundreds of them. When I'm saying competencies, I'm not talking about a list as long as your arm. I'm talking
Can
about.
you give us an example of some that have jumped out at you, or one or two?
Solving, problem solving is a great one. So certainly looking at the way people address a problem that occurs, not always looking for the easy solution, because as we know in recruitment, the first solution doesn't always work. You've got to have multiple options. So how are people breaking down a problem, assessing it, and looking at alternative solutions? So problem solving is just one of those skills, but there's probably 4, maybe 5 main ones that I assess through my process.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Oh, psychometric tools from Erica. What psychometric tools do you use? Now, we don't tend to use them much anymore. We used to in the old days a lot, right? But are they making a comeback? Are there some good ones?
Look, like we all would feel, they have a place. We have to be careful with what we use them for. What I'm trying to do with it is assess those competencies that are unproven. They've worked in a customer service, retail, or hospitality environment. They're saying they've got problem solving skills. How can I assess that as relevant for now in a service-based industry, client to company to business like recruitment? So I'm using it in a very specific way. And I think when you do that with psychometric tools, they work well. I'm accredited in a product called McQuaig, which I'm a strong believer is a great tool, particularly for building teams and working with teams and understanding what you've got in terms of the mix, but I also apply that to the external market. So when I do my McQuaig assessment and then interpretation and training, I talk to people about how they can utilize what they know about themselves with their client base and what kind of personality traits do they see in their clients and how can they adapt that style. It's all about adaptability. So I'm qualified in McQuaig, but I also use DISC. Both of those tools are based on the original Myers-Briggs type indicator. So very basic tests that are done easily online without too much stress or pressure from the candidate, but produce a really accurate result, in my opinion.
No, very good. All right, thanks. And thanks, Erica, for the question. Anyone else with a question? I've got more, so stay there because there's some good ones that we can tease out. All right, so you mentioned 360 recruitment. In the past, we've had a lot of discussions about it's impossible to find great 360 recruiters. Have you had any insights around models that can support people to be better recruiters, for example, additional resourcing support?
Yeah, I train them in 360 recruitment because I want them to be able to fit in and slot into a variety of different environments. I want them to have a career in our industry. I want them to be able to feed themselves at some point as well. So the training and the expectation of what they come in with is that it is 360. But I always would actually encourage clients that work with me to get them to come in at a resource level, at a support level, at a candidate side level. It's easier for them to get into the rhythm of some of the work if they're doing it candidate side to start with. But look, many clients will, again, it depends on their own experience. I placed a woman who had 20 odd years experience in real estate. She could talk to a client day one. She didn't need to sit behind and do the candidate side. So it depends on the individual and the candidate or the trainee coming through, but they are trained as 360. Yes, in our industry and in job application, I probably recommend candidate side to start with, moving into client side, depending on skills as well.
I want to come back to real estate in a second. Erica just asked one more. She said, is it still high I and high D in DISC? For recruiters?
In short answer, yes, but there is a combination there that is important as well. It's not just ID or DI. It's about different combinations of that. But Erica, I've placed some SCs and they're killing it. So this is where we've got to stop. We've got to not get rigid about using the tools in that way because, some of the SCs or ISs actually are really killing it in our industry.
Yeah, anyone that wants to check out DISC, you can just Google it, and around $100 for a really good report. And it's very impressive to send the report to clients as well. They're wow, because the report looks like it's worth a lot more than $99. So
yeah, absolutely. Have a chat with me if you want a referral too. Yeah.
You mentioned real estate. I'm hearing from some of the clients that I sit on the boards of that they are finding some good people from the real estate industry. Obviously really hard with the housing market so tight to get listings. So there's some there's a lot of real estate people out there going, what am I going to do? I can't be cold calling anymore. What are my career options? So that's a good one.
It's always been a great transferable industry. I found I've converted a lot of real estate agents, not just in my program, but when I managed recruitment teams as well, into real estate, from real estate into recruitment. There's great crossover. It's really similar. They've got vendor buyer, we've got client candidate.
Yeah.
They're usually great at that relationship building side. They're usually great at the problem solving side, and it's conceptual business sales in most cases. Although you're dealing residential market to some extent as well. But yeah, it's always been a good crossover.
Yeah, and Jason's asked, I don't know whether it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because given it's coming from Jason, but yeah, what about let's how we call it, lightly worn car salespeople. There's a massive shortage of cars at the moment, and how they've got a lot of transferable skills, maybe.
Any industry, I guess the point I want to make to you, thanks Jason, yes, but I want to make the point that stop thinking about being rigid about where they've got to come from and just open your mind. Any industry, yes, they could be used car salespeople. They could be non-sales related at all. That's what I think we've got to get, a broader view of in terms of looking at those core competencies, as I said, and not just what they've done before. So yeah, that's my ultimate message to you is they could come from anywhere, and if you broaden it out, you could certainly open the market for yourself. Yeah,
good. Very good. Anyone want to chip in on this topic because it's a good one? Industry experience. A lot of people will argue that it's a competitive advantage if they have got experience in the industry they're recruiting in. What's your view?
It certainly helps. You're not having to teach them industry knowledge as well as recruitment at the same time. There's definitely that trade-off and that benefit there. But at the same time, you can learn that. You guys know that. Those of you that have worked in different industries, I've worked in probably 6 different industries in my career. Did I know anything about going into those industries before I went in? No. Did I make a hell of a lot of money in each one? Yes. It takes a little bit of time to learn that, but it's not hard to build a network. It's not hard to start doing some reading, getting out there, talking to clients and candidates, and you pick up that knowledge really quickly. So again, anything that you've got as a fixed mindset around why someone can or can't work in recruitment is what I want you to challenge as, my final, minimum takeaway from today. Challenge the way you've thought about this before, because there are people out there, and I saw Erica's comment, having a heartbeat at the moment is a minimum criteria. That's kind of as broad as it gets. You'll be surprised the conversations that I'm having with all sorts of different people. And yes, I reject some as well. Not everybody's cut out for this. We know that. So I'm not sort of suggesting anyone can become a recruiter, but I know that it's broader than where a lot of our fixed ideas have been to date.
Yeah, so Nadia's commented there that, Jen's commented that Nadia came from a graphic design background and is one of the best staff she's ever hired. And so that's really good. And that's one of yours, Adele. And on that, Adele, people are leaving the industry. Those stats just blew us all away right at the beginning. Have you got some insights now into why they're leaving and maybe some things that us as business owners can be doing better? Yeah,
look, there is a small element of it. It isn't for everyone. We know that. And sometimes even with all the training and that all of that support, for some people, they just go back out again. They give it a try and they go back out of the industry, or they're just not seeing themselves as a long-term future there. But I try to make sure that they're not making that decision too quickly, too early in the process, because as we all know, it takes some time, like a new pair of shoes, to feel comfortable. So I don't want people to make that rash decision. I want them to actually have a really good experience before any final decisions are made about whether this is a career for me, and give it some time. So my advice to agency owners is make sure that it is a good experience coming in. If we're going to lose them, we want them to go out of our industry going, I gave recruitment a try, I was well supported and well trained, it wasn't for me. We don't want them to say, I tried recruitment and they're a bunch of psychos and the commission structures out of this world, and they stuck me in front of a computer with a phone and they gave me a target and it was hectic and I didn't enjoy it, I'm out. We don't want people to talk about our industry, even if they're unsuccessful in it, to go out and say it's a bad thing. We want to attract more people.
Yeah, okay, very good. Anyone else? Two seconds. All right. Mature workers you talked about. That was a big learning for me. I haven't really thought about that. The traditional recruitment company is a really fired up team that works hard, plays hard. They're out at night celebrating their wins and doing a whole bunch of great team building activities together. And then I started looking at their retention rates for that sort of younger class of recruiter, if you like, that you talked about, and started to think, well, hang on, what about more mature recruiters then, to provide the diversity which is critical and we're really poor at, but also stability, which could really reduce down that staff turnover, very high staff turnover level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just that mix of diversity. Young people are great for those reasons that we know, and mature candidates bring a different angle to it. So again, challenge your thought. If you've always thought they need to be young because they need to be moldable and pliable, think about that 40, 50 something candidate who's got, you know, even more than the 10 years experience, 20 years experience, and what they actually bring to you. And they are trainable and can actually possibly, you know, be returning an investment much sooner than the young person, and less likely to give it up so quickly, less likely to chuck it in. They've got greater resilience. So the one thing that I'm always asked is around, what do you think is the number one thing a good recruiter needs to have? We all know the answer to that. It's resilience. How do you become resilient? You become resilient with experience, adversity. Things happen to you, bad things happen, you recover, you move on. That comes from life as well. So that's, you know.
It does. And then it becomes normal and you know how to deal with it when it comes up again, right?
Yeah.
So, Adele, really good. We better finish off because people have champagne and razor blades, yes. So we better finish up because people have got 1 o'clock meetings to go to, but so much great content there. We will be sending a copy of your presentation to everyone, including the recording as well. Really good, and I've had people privately message me telling you that, or to say to you, really, really good, and some great ideas. So you've got Adele's contact details there. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Please do join us next month. We've got a really interesting speaker, and I'm going to be sending you details on that really soon, and it's going to be something new in the industry, and it's going to really help with making more placements and building an even better recruitment business. So stay tuned from that. You'll get an email on that soon. But yeah, Adele, thanks a lot. Thanks to all our supporters too who join us on this meeting. Also, we appreciate your support, and everyone, thanks for being with us, and we hope to see you all again next month. So thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you.